Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Transforming Fantasy into Reality with Modo and Nuke. My name is Elise, and I am part of Foundry's industry marketing team, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar and our guest speaker, Christian Block, as well as my two colleagues, Greg Brown and DJ Mateus. Christian was the VFX supervisor and co-producer of Troll Bridge, and he will be taking us behind the scenes of Troll Bridge during today's presentation. But before I pass it over, I'd just like to go over some quick Foundry updates as well as some housekeeping for today's session. The webinar is being recorded, and a link of the recording will be sent directly to you. Also, we will be ending with a live Q&A. So if there's anything you'd like to ask, please add your questions into the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Today's event is part of Foundry's greater virtual event series, and we have some exciting events coming up, including an artist guide to Blink script within Nuke, and we'll also be participating in the real-time conference and FMX at the end of April and beginning of May, so be on the lookout for us there. If you have any feedback or questions about our virtual event series, please feel free to reach out to us at virtual.events@foundry.com. I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention Foundry Learn, where we have many great resources available, including release notes, developer docs, and more. Also on our Foundry Learn page, you can find the first part of the Color Management Fundamentals and ACES workflow training that was created by Victor Perez in conjunction with Netflix. Also, I'd like to encourage you to stay up to date with Foundry by reading our Insights Hub. On our Insights Hub, you can find some case studies and articles on the latest industry trends. Also, if you're on social media or like to watch YouTube, subscribe to our channels, whether it be Foundry's YouTube channel or the Modo Geeks TV channel. Most Fridays, they are there hanging out and doing a brew o'clock. So if you subscribe, you'll be able to join in. And also, if you're an artist who likes to share their work and that's created with Modo or Nuke or Mari, please tag us. We love to see it, and we love to share that on our social media channels. And finally, I'd just like to say thank you to all of our guest speakers, especially Christian today for joining us, and the others who have joined us so far this year. We're very grateful for your continuous support in helping us put together this great series of events. I'd also like to thank everybody for taking an hour out of their day and joining us here live. So with that, I'm going to just play a quick video that Christian shared with us and then hand it over to him. So enjoy today's webinar.
Hello. Welcome to this presentation. My name is Christian Bloch, and I hope you liked what you just saw. As a matter of fact, I hope you saw the movie Trollbridge. I'm the visual effects supervisor and co-producer, coincidentally, of this little film. And yeah, today I'm going to talk about, give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes. Let me just dive right in. If you don't know about Terry Pratchett, this is the author of this story. And he is a man who captured my imagination at a young age. Oops, my chair's in the way. So, I've been a lifetime fan of his work. He is a British fantasy author, a humorist, a philosopher, even though he would never admit it. He's often compared to Douglas Adams. Here in the US, he's most known for his cooperation with Neil Gaiman. They've been good friends. I realized I'm sitting right in the middle of the whole thing. Okay, let me go a little sideways. They both, Good Omens is a show that just came out on Netflix. Really amazing show, highly recommend. It's about the apocalypse. Terry died at the age of 66, sadly, midst of our production. He should be more known in America. He sold 85 million books. So I don't know why that doesn't make you an instant celebrity. He got knighted in 2009 and immediately realized that now he had the right to carry a sword, so he went out and made himself his own sword. He gathered 60 kilo of iron ore around the British landscape and then smelted, smithed it, and made a sword. When he got the Carnegie Medal in 2001 for his children's book, The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents, he made himself a replica out of chocolate and ate it during the acceptance speech. So he's a great guy, a phenomenal author. He lived his life the way he wrote his books. And he wrote 41 novels. That's what he left us with. These are all, it's a huge body of work. They're all sort of connected with each other. Kind of like the extended universe of Marvel, almost. There are multiple storylines. Several books follow several characters and they cross every once in a while. And our story actually comes from, our film is the cinematic adaptation of a short story. And it sits in this entire universe right here. So it's kind of halfway of the character arc of Conan the Barbarian. And the whole Discworld universe has always been very art-inspiring. It starts with the colorful covers, originally drawn by Josh Kirby, but it really took off later on when Paul Kidby took over. And Paul Kidby's art actually is what ended up sort of setting the visual style and the visual language of the Discworld. Ignore the fact that it is a world that is on 4 elements flying on a turtle through the endlessness of space. It is a lot less bogus and a lot less nonsense. The characters themselves that inhabit this world are absolutely real. They are described as real people, which is a big difference between the grandstand fantasy that's normally done. And even Death is a real person in his books and incredibly relatable. Loves kitten. The Three Witches also incredibly iconic characters he created with Miss Weatherwax here. And one of his iconic characters that Terry created, Paul Kidby fleshed out and kind of visualized, was Conan the Barbarian. here seen with his gray horde of all the other retired heroes, or shall I say never actually retired, because that's the thing, when you're undefeated, then you just grow old. And our Cohen is Don Bridges. In real life, he doesn't look like that at all. That's actually him. So a lot of makeup went into turning him into Cohen. Way in the way, I realize. Picture. And yeah, it turns out he is exactly the Cohen that you'd know from the books. So, bang on. This was probably one of the earliest things that we got figured out how to turn, or that my director had figured out. In fact, let me let the director say what the movie is about to state. Here is a little mini clip from our original, or our Kickstarter pitch, essentially. The whole film is a fan film that originated on Kickstarter.
We're talking massive sets, bigatures, CG trolls, epic battles. I mean, there's a bit in the original story where Cohen, the elderly barbarian, is talking to Micah the Bridge Troll about these massive Lord of the Rings style battles they used to get involved with in the old days and how great that was. Well, we've expanded that into a prologue, and we're able to show what Cohen was like when he was young. Terry liked what we were doing and got involved. He even wrote some dialogue specifically for us.
Hey, Edgeman of Fortune magazine.
Right.
Yeah, remember the ad? You know, we are going places, and you could be on the ground floor. 5 exclamation marks. Yeah. Oh, I should have seen it coming. He's mad.
In essence, Trollbridge is about the world's last barbarian hero embarking on a suicide mission to battle a troll. He doesn't expect to survive. He doesn't particularly want to. The world has moved on from needing barbarian heroes to save the day. There isn't a place for him in it anymore. And that's thematically what this film is about. I mean, yes, there's a talking horse, impossibly giant architecture and other such nonsense, but the film is about the shape Cohen left in the world when he was young, and about how that shape is closing in on now.
So, I couldn't say it better. So that's the essence of the film. It still needed to be done in a grand way. So, yeah, another Terry Pratchett quote. We just had no idea how hard it would be to get that thing on screen. The clip you just saw, that was my director, Daniel Knight, in 2011, when we did the Kickstarter pitch. And that actually was one of the most successful Kickstarter pitches at that time. In fact, the most successful, the biggest movie funding that ever happened then. And we raised about $80,000. Outside of Kickstarter, we raised a little bit extra. So I think in total we had $145,000, which sounds like a lot of money for a normal person, but any filmmaker will laugh at you and say, what, you want to make one shot in Game of Thrones? Because that's about the budgetary situation we are talking about. Grand CG. But the thing is, we still want to do it, so had to use the money wisely. They ended up spending a lot of it actually on New Zealand. The thing is, everybody was still a volunteer. The only way how we could get the whole thing done was by everybody volunteering, the DP volunteering, all the pretty much everybody across the board. And they ended up shooting a lot of phenomenal footage. This one I need to play. You can find all these trailers online as well on our website. The one problem was that you cannot actually get a horse into a helicopter. So a lot of these scenes in New Zealand are as epic as they are. They just have no horse in them. So it ended up needing a CG horse for a whole lot of it. Yeah, that's the New Zealand footage. The other problem was that originally we got involved with that movie in 2005. So the Micah Troll that you saw there, that was kind of like the first iteration, which is pretty much just as bad as even the footage. So by that time, we realized that we have to reshoot everything. Originally, the movie was supposed to be a lot smaller.
Bridge.
So that was one of the earliest. That was 2005, Micah. But reshooting everything meant this time it needs to be epic. So the bridge was no longer just a tiny little river crossing. It had to be an epic valley bridge that spans huge. There was a studio shoot, and from that studio shoot, that is also what you saw the World in Discworld, the documentary up front from. And quick snippet from that. That's what they thought in April 2012.
How long has it been to get to this point now?
It's 8 years and 11 months. So next month, the 23rd of next month, will be 9 years since we were originally location scouting for Bridge.
Anything else you would have gotten if you could have, or
I don't know what else we would have got. I'm happy. I'm very happy.
Excellent, great.
I told you I'm a shit interview.
This has been one of the most amicable crews I've ever worked with. I think everyone's really friendly and everyone's such a team.
It's epic. It's the epicest small film ever.
I'm very sad because I've thoroughly enjoyed working here for the last few days. I've been working in film for a while, and I've been on a fair few sets, and I don't think I've ever been on one, and this is an absolute truth, where everybody's worked together so well.
So yeah, that's when real production people have all the fun.
I was supposed to say, give another 2 years.
Don't say that.
You've got to make that'll give it a 10-year.
Don't say that. Are you recording? Don't say 10 years to Dan.
Edit it in 3 months.
10 years is pretty much exactly today. So this was 10 years ago. We did finish it 8 years later. And part of the reason is because we had a huge to-do list. There were 142 shots with Micah, and he's a main actor. He is going through the exposition, the funny bits, the comedy, the slapstick, but also enormously elaborate and emotional dialogue. And then having his wife and son on screen for only 25 shots still means you gotta build and rig and animate and do all that. So even minor effects like the matte paintings that have to go throughout the whole film don't even fit on the screen anymore. So let me just start off going through a whole bunch of those. The bridge is one of the main characters in the scene, clearly, because the environment sets the mood and all that. This one started out as a concept painting by Svetoslav Petrov, and really phenomenal concepts. And a lot of the times it's been these concepts that we use to draw people into the project, to inspire them. At some point we thought we would add ice giants, and because there's a bit of a mentioning in some other books that ice giants previously roamed the Hub Mountains. Decided against it eventually. Here was the ultimate, the final design we ended on, and a lot of inspiration was coming from real world locations. Like here is I think it's in the Tuscany area. Some of these types of bridges, and for the type of masonry, the stonework, we picked something that has like history and feels like it, and then Brian Baxter was actually the main artist building out that bridge to the point where he sketched it out, added all those details that or like indicators of what could be history, sculpted the whole thing out in ZBrush, and it was ultimately said that it would have 5 towers. The first tower would be the gate tower where we come in. Then my chairs. Then we get the guard tower, which would be coming right after, and then a central tower, which would be the largest. And each of those needed sort of a different style, different types of breakup, just to have a little bit of variation. The main one, the front one, is actually the one that needs to connect to the real set. And the actual test was this picture where you'd have the actual practical on stage built right here, and everything outside would be the CG extension. So this was the first picture where we're like, okay, this is gonna work. We can run with this. It's not quite as detailed yet. You see neonos, there's some icicles here that are not here yet, so but it's definitely on the way. More concerning was that the bridge looked empty. If you have a bridge that spans half a kilometer, you need to put stuff on it. So a whole bunch of people jumped in and helped, building carts and then wrecking them right away, just to give it the whole backstory. Building material, it has been repaired 1 million times over from stuff you find as a bridge troll, found materials. Eventually, we needed even more resolution. That was right around the time when Megascans came out, and the first experiments with applying Megascan texture displacement, or the Megascan textures as displacement to simple geometry, yielded pretty good results, and that was a good path forward to up-resing the bridge to the micro level, really. That was ultimately done then in Substance. And now the icicles are coming, and then all the shading. There was also one shading pass done in Mari. So first textures were originally collected in Mari and then painted over once more. At that point, I think Richard Holzhausen was one of the main designers that took it forward on this. We needed chains. We figured it looked kind of unstructured here. Couldn't really tell that these towers are individual towers. So we added way more detail with chains. Even brought in structural engineering, who explained to us that as it's not a suspension bridge, it technically doesn't need chains, but a lot of other bridges have them too. But they would be used to kind of pull instead of push somehow. So he recommended having counterweights. And so we built all these mechanisms actually out just so we could wreck them and then play with different impromptu reparations on that whole thing. So yeah, that's kind of how the bridge eventually came together. Ultimately, the only place that we actually really needed was the first segment between the entrance tower and the first guard tower. Because they never actually go further. That's the only place where the action is taking place. And so that section got an extra detail built out for the whole path where Micah comes up and where his actual motion would happen. Let me just pop through them a little quicker now. Here's that bridge extension, how it comes together in the opening in the first shot. Sorry for my bad grain right there. So that was the new composite on this, and clearly a lot of it needs to be hidden, obviously, always. And here's the extra high-res area where we planned out where Micah can climb up that pillar, come out of his little hiding place. And so we figured this would be a trodden path, but a vertical trodden path. And little tip here for artists. Even though we ended up, even though to paint actual geometry and normal maps on, you can actually use Substance Painter to do normal maps on geometry that is displaced, but you have to bake it out first. At least at that stage, it was the case. But the maps that would be generated would go back into Modo onto the unfrozen model and would actually end up looking like this in the render. So that was pretty cool how we could round trip this there and add more detail that looks sculpted, but is actually just painted. Eventually, we had enough bridge that we could even do full 3D camera moves. So in some shots, not much of that plate was really left, quite frankly. Here you can see even the horse had to be kind of cobbled together there from a different shot for performance reasons. But ultimately, that bridge ends up appearing in pretty much every shot because there was only a small piece of real bridge actually built. You see the plate pretty much always cuts out right there. And so most of it is bridge and, of course, matte paintings. The entire background, probably 70% of pixels you see on screen are matte painting. And they were all done by Dave Tipper, a god walking the earth. He works out of a shed in New Zealand, so I guess he's got the best reference right outside his window. Absolutely epic. Most of the time, you just asked him for something, and next day comes the next masterpiece. Absolute killer. He also ended up creating a lot of it, like these clouds, for example. The nice thing was that he was already working in Nuke, and so he wasn't delivering his matte paintings just as an image, but as Nuke composite. So you would actually have the full 3D individual layers, and this was reprojected onto geometry. And so, and even the clouds were their own little system in the 2.5D Nuke space, which meant everything was actually handling, we were actually just shoving very small files around each other, fairly small Nuke comps to make adjustments. Originally, we had thought we'd needed a full 3D mountain around, but it turns out it wasn't actually even necessary. So the 2D approach meant we had a lot more detail, or 2.5D, and it also merged itself better in with extra footage for the foreground clouds and better layering this way. Here's another very sweet, the long shot. This was, probably one of my favorites. And this is all CG bridge in this case, straight off Modo. Pretty cool, huh? I'm gonna keep talking quickly because I still got Micah. I haven't even talked about the main character yet. This was actually a bit of a Modo experiment. Micah originally, it was the first test animation. The idea was to sort of roto animate.
Mika's the name. You don't know what a lot of this is.
And basically set keyframes right over
Mika's the name. You don't know what a lot of this is.
This was the first time, this was the first test where we're like, okay, this might actually work without mocap. Except
My
it's still
bloody
a little
brother-in-law's always wanking about his huge bloody wooden bridge. That's all my wife ever talks about.
So it was straight off Daniel's performances. 2005, once again, it's extremely clear that this would not hold up today, or even probably in 2005, to be honest. So after the reboot of the project and after the 2013, that's when Post was really starting anew. So Micah got a complete facelift in Modo this time. Originally he was started in Lightwave, now migrated to Modo, back to the drawing board, getting new reference in, making sure he's no longer naked, for example. That had bothered me the whole time. And also giving those, at that time, the sculpting tools were fairly new in Modo, and so really gave him a new detailed brush over. Really in the way here. So before the old and the new, and really getting all the craggly cracks, and this is all sculpted with the multi-res sculpt straight in Modo. Pretty convenient actually how it has these ZBrush-like shaders, which you wouldn't be able to tell that it's not ZBrush. It feels like ZBrush, quacks like ZBrush. Maybe not quite as fast and whatnot, but the you get the time back because you never have to export. You can just hop into sculpting, hop into texturing. Actually, he was also texture painted right in Modo. So classic UV, and then just taking a little piece of rock that I found that I liked, and just kind of brushing them on and basically sculpting out every single one of those plates, painting them out. And so it's a pretty elaborate process actually. But again, without ever actually changing software, painting straight in Modo. Has the convenience that you can do your look design, your shader design right away. You can get your test renders done, which are the actual render engine that you're going to end up working with. Ultimately, the whole thing was then baked down. So I think my laptop's really in the way here. What it says down there on the bottom is that the original sculpt was having 15 million polys with their sub-pixel displacement. And the one that was then baked down to is a vector displacement map. Yeah. Oh, shit. I'm just going to tear everything apart. I can't. So with a vector displacement map, it was only 15,000 polys. Whoops. Now let me prepare this quickly. The rigging was also done straight in Modo, actually. So we used the phenomenal auto character setup from Lucas Pacera for this. In fact, we were working very closely in collaboration with him, and he even helped me build the face rig in a way that integrates into ACS, so poses and everything would be working on the face. The face rig itself is a fairly complicated matter. Here's the best book I can recommend. This is what I used to build the face rig out. The Art of Moving Points by Brian Tyndall. It's an ebook, actually, interactive. Highly recommend. This is a cluster-based animation. So the idea is that you define these point clusters and you would use deformers in a particular order of operation to simulate the sliding skin across all dimensions. So it's point clusters that slide over the geometry. Meaning in Modo itself, this is then implemented as a lot of spline deformers. Rigged up in an enormous noodle salad. But all the actual controllers themselves gotten rigged into ACS. So you would have, this was the first face test where Can he be angry? Can he be funny? Can he be smirky? We found out at that point we were still kind of designing look, like, would he have eyebrows or no eyebrows? I think we decided on shaving them because it was kind of interfering. And the finished version of the rig ended up having pretty much all these controllers and all these deformers sort of hidden underneath, and you just have these very simple, pretty simple system of main controls, which would be these blocks, and each of those is broken down into 3 sub-controls, which you could use for finer adjustments. But whatever you do on those would always be made into like some sort of automatically picking the direction where would these skin clusters slide and how would they bend. It looks a lot softer in this geometry style than before the because the displacement ultimately is what gives it the whole look. And even animation we did in Modo, which wasn't that easy because you can't really find Modo animators. This is not a job that exists so much. Everybody's a Maya animator. So the first thing was setting up documentation. To get this whole thing done, we had a bootcamp website that had detailed tutorials, not only on like pretty much all these instructional, what is this rig? How does Modo work? Very much in 10 lessons, broken down, so any animator could come in and say, and jump in. They would find out how because keyframe is keyframe. If you know what a graph editor looks like, and just kind of explain them to people. And a lot of animators actually said they liked Modo now better because suddenly, once they, especially with the ACS4, once you know what's where, it's super easy. Here's the classic character sheet. Kind of sort of just as a reminder for animators, what would be the default stance, so that they don't bring him too straighten him out too much. Yeah. Just to keep him in character for the most of the time. So things that animators would repeatedly do, like get him lifted up so his feet go straight, which is not in the character. He needs to be much more bulky and always heavy. And for the animation itself, we actually had a secondary witness camera, which would sometimes be helpful, but not most animators didn't use it, to be honest. The straight performance from, oh my God, name blank. Oh God, this, Jesus. Don? No, that's not Don. I'm sorry. Don't kill me. You also see those balls there. We actually put those under the head of the actor, so he as an eyeline reference. And so yeah, for animators, we also had these extra pickers. And one of my favorite inventions is the face picker here. So the body picker for picking the body parts, but the face picker wasn't just picking; it also had quick lip sync controls, where these joystick style controls down there, they would already encapsulate full mouth movements into the A. So up down makes the mouth from A to M, that transition, and the left right goes E to O. And just with this one joystick, you can already do a rough lip sync. And so yeah, that was one of the things. Another thing we found out was that since every animator was working from their own home, from their own house, we actually set up the scene in different versions. So there is a light version that people can run on a laptop that still gives you decent frame rate. Just a lot of the stuff is turned off. The textures aren't even loaded. Then there's the regular version for people with a desktop. And if anybody has a gaming machine, they can feel free to take the full version. We ended up animating on this for so long that normally you would freeze the software version, but for us that was not even an option because the Modo team was really helpful in using Mica as a benchmark tool, and the overly complicated rig is like a worst case scenario. And a lot of the features you might have noticed, things like animation caching, they really help a lot with animation. I think we started in Modo 5, I would say. I know for a fact that we started with 3.5 frames per second as a frame rate. And in the end, it was 60 frames per second. Same rig, just Modo becoming faster and faster and faster, getting more optimized. So complete breeze. Excuse me. Ironically, the final Mica that you see in the film is actually just this geometry. Very, very few polygons. In fact, these are the animated polygons. These are the ones in the rig. All the rest of the detail comes from the vector displacement map, which is a little better than displacement maps because vector displacement can really move points sideways. That's how you get these overhangs and really cracks that are detailed enough to go deep and still have detail on the sides. So yeah, that's pretty much Mica in a nutshell.
Sorry. That's all right. Bits fall off all the time, like I said.
Greg is coming in. I know we're running out of time here, right?
Of course, my computer wants to freeze the moment I do come in here. Yeah, just a few more minutes, and we'll move on to QA. But please continue. Let's go for like another three minutes or so.
Okay, I got a quick one. I'm just gonna keep clicking through here. The horse, for example. This was another wonderful collaboration. Was sculpted by Dimitri Lepe. He came into this project as a fan, and he built the horse from the inside out. He started right there from the ground. Muscles actually gave measurements because to measure it against the live action horse that we had. Even the furnishing on the saddle of the horse was all modeled out. And we had two versions of the horse, actually. One is the full body version. This was used for all the wide shots, all the helicopter shots when he's walking through the snow. And so this one needed all the saddle, all the furnishing. Eventually, we ended up putting this horse on the bridge as well for some of those extra camera movement shots. UVs, obviously, ended up getting a groom artist, a really good one, Cameron Christian. Really terrible. I'm sitting right over the credits. I'm sorry. But even at the end, the big challenge was still to get it actually integrated.
What took you so long?
And so, yeah, and animated. So this was also the part where some people that came into the project kind of just from interest ended up becoming supervisor. For example, Marta, she originally just signed up to animate Mica, and she did just such a phenomenal job, cute animations, that when the horse was ready and to animate, she said she has horses around her. She lives in the country, and she loves horses too. So she became the most, such an incredible supervisor that I wasn't even hands-on the horse at all. She was giving people amazing instructions, really going deep, getting extra photos of exactly the horse movements that she needed, the horse mouths. So absolute phenomenal. This was the type of volunteer engagement where people coming in and then growing in the project and sort of using it as a way to grow themselves. and having like this space where nobody restricts you, because anybody could take on any role if they feel like they can do it, and they can do it. We had texture painters that finally wanted to animate. We had tech artists that finally were too long out of lighting and wanted to do something creative again. We had people straight out of school that wanted to have something for their reel. We had people that were doing commercial animation all day long and wanted to do something cute. That's not just hardware or devices. So yeah. One last one. This is probably the shot I like the most. Nuke was used in compositing, obviously, and compositing alone, each single shot had a million challenges. With the beard, with so many things. And yeah, ultimately, I'm just kind of glad it came together the way it did. All right, I would leave it there, I guess.
Okay. That is absolutely fantastic, Christian. I was at the time I was a creative specialist here at Foundry. I guess during the later stage of post production while you're working on this, and so I got to see some of the rigs and the work that was being done behind the scenes. I saw some of the early shots before we actually had, or there was any compositing that was done. And at that time, I was like, "This is really cool." But then I noticed in January, all of a sudden, it was live on YouTube, and I'm like, Trollbridge, it's out there now. And then I finally watched the actual film, and it's an amazingly good short film. I was expecting something that, kind of fan film like that. You're like, that's an amazing job that these people did, but it's not in that category of like, this was just amazing that a couple people, or that people, did this as a passion project. You actually made a really great character-driven film. And I mean, part of that is Terry Pratchett, but part of that is also just all the work you did in this. So, I mean, I just want to kind of gush about how great of a job you did with this short film. It's
the fans like it a lot, and it's actually been the fan involvement that was driving the whole thing, that was keeping us doing it. It was really hard to keep going after Terry died, but then yeah.
But even more reason to at that point, for sure, because I think, like you've articulated many times about this is a love letter to Terry Pratchett, and that really comes through in what you created. It's excellent in every way that it can possibly be excellent. And so,
I mean, he was involved in the production as much as that he's seen a few months before his passing an almost finished version at the side note of a convention. And I was told he was really happy with it. Was still standing behind it.
Well, you helped do incredible justice to, you mentioned how can somebody who's sold 85 million books not be a celebrity, right? You did great justice to, I mean, a celebrated artist that is only being more celebrated as time passes. So what role did Foundry play in this production?
Oh, Foundry. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even mention Foundry was our main sponsor. Oh my God. Thank you guys so much for making this possible. Okay. Yes. It was nobody less than Brad Peebler put his personal support behind it. He did a modcast from his Prius. He was telling everybody to join the project. And this is actually when a lot of artists came flocking. And the fact that we had access to Foundry software, Foundry licenses. That was another wonderful way to put this project onto legitimate stands. So thank you so much.
No, cool. Just curious. Yeah, so you used Modo and you used Nuke, and those are the primary tools. Yeah.
Pretty much every software under the planet, but it turned out Modo was most versatile in terms of rendering on an online farm. Our secondary sponsor was Garage Farm. Highly recommend. They are very, very cheap. Yes, I can say cheap. It's not a bad word in this case. They're really, really cheap. And with Modo, you get unlimited render node licenses. on any farm. That's the one big selling point. If you're doing compositing on top of it anyways, nobody will know what you render stuff in. So, yeah.
Well, it was well enough done.
We had much bigger problems with the horse, which was done in Arnold, which was a nightmare licensing-wise, or even just having somebody test it or finding somebody who can shade it or whatnot. So the bridge was not 100% in Modo. We had friends at high places. The tech guy, Bjorn Ziegert from Weda, he's actually one of the in-house tech guys. He's a huge Modo head too, and he wanted to get into creative stuff again. So he lit the bridge. He figured all the horse render stuff out, and yeah, he was a huge help too. And when you get a guy at Weda working on your film, and then people come and see what he's doing, all of a sudden you have an animator at Weda do a camera move, just because they're like, oh, that's cool. Let me do a camera move through that spider. So what you saw in the beginning, in the opening, that was not even my camera move. That was from a Weda animator.
That experience alone must have been just extraordinarily exciting to see as it comes together. I do have, we were starting to get some questions in, and there's one here that I noticed from Arvid Walborg. So this project already had, this is an interesting question. So this project already had a work from home situation. How would you compare this project to current world situation and being done at home instead of at a facility building?
We had a lot of the same challenges. One challenge is that when everybody's from home, everybody relies on their own machine, on their home software. You cannot actually, you suddenly have to figure out ways how to share files that are not gigabytes, but just kilobytes to do things. So for example, you got to be organized. So we used Shotgun. That was our third main sponsor. Not Autodesk. Eventually, we got grandfathered into Autodesk, but we actually were on the Shotgun side. Shotgun was our sponsor officially. And so something like this, like an organizational tool like that, is extremely helpful. I don't know if you're familiar with Shotgun. It allows you to post your work, but not just the clip. We also made it mandatory that you actually append the source file. So if you post a composite, you have to also append your nuke comp, your nuke script. If you make an animation, you also have to attach the animation file. And so the good thing is that nuke scripts are tiny. With Mica, with the ACS4, all the animations aren't even full Modo scenes. They are literally just tiny animation snippets that you drag in. And so, yeah, this collaborative file sharing is important. The other thing is you have to have a place where you can meet and gather. So I had daily meetings on Skype with the director and the producer, and also pulled in individual animators when they had questions or asked or requested or stuff like that. So having a regular schedule where you can coordinate and meet virtually, and having a good file sharing system in place. We also had Dropbox, a 3 terabyte business account.
All right. I think I'll take the next one on this, Greg, if you don't mind. I'm just going based off the number of upvotes. So if there's a question in the questions that you see, upvote it, and they'll come to the top of this, and we'll be sure to make sure those get answered. So this one's from James Atkinson. He asks, what was used for the hair and fur, and how was it integrated into the project?
I mean, it depends. The hair on the horse was done in Yeti, which I'm honestly, it was not really integrated into a project. It was always a pain in the ass and kind of running as its own side stream. It had its own tech, almost its own tech division that needed to solve how that's done. On Mica, he is a hairy guy himself as well. and all his hair, all his moss and all that is straight Moto, straight out of Moto, right where it is.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Even the fuzziness on
Like I
the
said.
shoulder pad and everything. So
So Micah was Moto, and then the horse was Yeti, you mentioned?
the horse was Yeti and Arnold,
Okay, Yeti and Arnold.
which is a particular toxic combination because there's only one build of Yeti and one build of Arnold that work together. None of this has happened in Moto because you don't need a plugin and it just works. That's why it's a lot simpler there.
Very, very cool. There's another question here from, let's see, actually, I should probably check and see what's been upvoted. Okay, DJ answered that one already. And Philip Thader, what was the key problem in mixing it together, lighting? Do you make HDR environment maps on your own? This is kind of a leading question here.
Right. Actually, I do make. I mean, I'm known for many things. I'm also known for writing the HDRI handbook. And one of my jobs is right now that I'm a panel professor and teach people how to do HDRIs at Nomen School of Visual Effects. So I also run HDRlabs.com, so might bring that back. I honestly don't really quite know. Like after you finish a project like this, you're kind of a little bit hanging in the air, and then comes a pandemic, and then you're like, I don't know. You know how those go.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I mean, again, I've been using your stuff when I was in production. I was using your HDRs all the time because they were the highest quality HDRs that were available, and then of course we incorporated a selection of those HDRs into our content. And so, if you guys go and take a look at our HDRs in the content browser, you'll actually see a whole bunch of Christian's HDRs in there. Some of them are
check out
inside of your apartment.
Prepared specifically to give. A little bit of, you know what? Now we're talking about. I'm probably gonna have to update this for our next Moto version.
We would yes, we will. That sounds absolutely fantastic. My favorite, I think, like I told you last time, is the Helipad Golden Hour. Anytime I need to just show an image of anything really quickly and easily and have decent lighting on it, that's my go-to.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, the colors are great. Yeah, the saturation is just perfect. And so, yeah, and if you, by the way, anybody who goes and looks at the Helipad ones, if you swing the HDR around, you will see Christian in one of those HDRs, I believe. It's kind of a little.
I also have a new process actually for 32K HDRs. So at that point, you can actually like set your camera to 100mm and just film.
Wow. Yeah, and actually, if you take a look at those HDR environments too, you'll see one of the more efficient ways of setting up an environment properly because it's split apart into multiple different images. You know, there is a spherical backdrop one that's just a JPEG, and then there's one that's for reflections, that's low resolution, and then or high resolution. Then there's a low resolution one just for the diffuse lighting. And so it's definitely a smarter way of setting up an environment, and you can kind of just learn something just by opening up those presets that are in the content browser. And DJ, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to the end of the hour here, so maybe we fit one or two more in here.
Perfect.
Let's see what we have on the side here. We'll ask one by Luis Godinez. So, how was the rendering experience inside of Moto?
How was the rendering experience?
Yeah. Like how'd that go in any shoot?
I mean, which renders? What experience do you have? I normally don't watch renders.
Did the preview renderer, for instance, did that help you out at all with rendering in Moto?
It does, I guess. I mean, it works. It's there is. I don't even know. What's your experience opening a door? It just doesn't. I don't know.
So you could say your priority
has a lot of troubles of like incompatibilities and this and that. or I cannot render this particular type of geometry because it comes from this or that. You don't have these problems in Modo because it's built in. It's right there. Everything works with that render engine. If you want to bake something, it bakes exactly the same way because it shoots the same rays that it would normally use to render. And so I find it bizarre that other software does not have a built-in render engine, and this entire third-party market has even had to be developed. Like, there wouldn't be render engines if Maya could render.
Yeah, that is a good point.
I mean,
well, I mean,
it's always the big question of like, that's the whole core purpose of the software. What I do find interesting is that Modo is so easily accepted in online render farms, and for some reason it renders faster on the farm even than expected. So honestly, these bridge shots that you saw, on average, one shot of the bridge itself came about $5 in render cost. It's nothing. That's
wow.
Like
wow.
It's ridiculous cheap.
And we have a new render. That was the default legacy render, which is still in Modo. The shaders have gone through a lot of updates over the past couple of years because we have multiple different shading models that are supported in the default render. But we do have a new render Empath, which is is physically based, and it's a path tracer that is basically the new iteration that you're going to continue to see develop further and further on.
Very interesting.
It's easier, and
this
it's easy.
project is going to be something with a lot of bling, and I believe a path tracer is exactly what I need for that to get
there we go.
Nice chromatic operation-y stuff and some refraction-y stuff going.
Well, it sounds like we need you on our alpha and connect you up with Alan, and I'm sure that you'd be able to provide some excellent feedback for him because Alan has been super receptive to feedback and been killing it on developing the new render. Let's go with one last question here from James Atkinson again. Besides ACS, which you used for rigging, were there any other key add-ons or kits that you used with Modo to help your workflow?
ACS is the key. That was the key to unlock the possibility to do it at all. So ACS is necessary for writing out actions, having animations set with and everything, having a character rig that is usable, that you can easy control and flip in and out of different. So it's because it's not just a rigging system, it's an animation system as well. And part of it was because we worked with Lucas. He always asked, what are your problems? What can you not do? And then he just did it. So there was, what other add-ons did we have on Modo? None, actually, really none. ACS
Awesome.
was the one add-on we needed. The second add-on I have is the GarageFarm uploader, where you say render and it uploads your scene assets. And it's smart enough to not upload anything that has already previously uploaded. So super cool.
Awesome. All right, very cool. And I guess I lied. That
used
is
a
the
lot
last
of
question.
new add-ons.
Oh, okay.
You would definitely need a lot of the compositing tricks here were necessary to have world map extraction. So I don't know what it was called. RGBZ world map world coordinate extractor or something. So that was pretty critical. We also had Houdini in use heavily for the sword effect. There was like its own problematic thing where it's a multi-layered, actually, let me. Yeah. Just coming up with a system that can both react to all the motion, and then you had to track the sword. So just that one effect alone, which is completely minor in the scope of the whole thing, was a lot of trouble to set up, and ended up being a shitload of individual elements that only come together in the comp. So you have a sparkly component, a smoky component.
Yeah, very cool.
So magic isn't done so easy.
Yeah, that's why you need Nuke right there. Got to put all that stuff together and make it pretty.
Really, that was the big problem.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we are pretty much we're over time a little bit, but one last thing I do want to ask you because I mean you're a really creative guy and you have other things you're working on as well. I mean, is there any stuff you're working on these days? Any projects you do? I know you're kind of into, interestingly, the Beat Saber community, right? Something like that.
Right. Yeah, I'm currently very involved in virtual spaces, cyberspace, building. And there's a emerging fitness community about rhythm games, so it's a lot of fun. And if you click my title link on this podcast webinar, then you should find my Blockyverse YouTube channel, which is highly experimental. Probably not always safe for work, but what does that mean these days?
Okay, that's awesome. I had to ask that because I love Beat Saber and kind of not as in an extroverted way like you are, but kind of into the whole Beat Saber fitness thing.
I would appreciate if people would subscribe to the channel because I need 100 subscribers so I can get a URL. YouTube doesn't.
There you go.
Deal those out anymore. You have to earn.
Subscribe to this man, please. He
nice.
Deserves many more subscribers. So thank you so much for putting this together. I know this was not a small challenge to present all this because, guys, there's a lot of extra information that we couldn't cram inside this time. Check out his website. There's all his website, but also Snowgun Films, I believe, right? Is that correct?
Trollbridge.film.
Mm-hmm.
That URL there. That's where you see a lot more making of, a lot more behind the scenes. You can see the full film in the best quality. Still watch it on YouTube to give it some plays, but otherwise, yeah, this is where a lot more making of. And all the credits, all the people that I forgot to mention, all 300 are right there.
Perfect, exactly. And if you haven't watched the film, check it out. You are going to be very, very pleasantly surprised with your investment of 30 minutes. It's fantastic, and it is well worth taking a watch. So thank you again for doing this for us, Christian. This has been fantastic.
This one quote.
There we go. Okay. There are times in life when people must know when not to let go. Balloons are designed to teach small children this.
Sometimes you just gotta do it and you gotta not let go.
I don't know if that's a good idea to tell artists that, but but no, I love it. It's a great quote. Yeah, and we will be talking more because yeah, definitely want to talk to you about that HDR stuff. And it sounds like we got a lot of things moto-wise that you could help us out on, and that would be fantastic. So thank you everybody for watching. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question, but we'll try and answer it over here, at least in text. And have a great day, and definitely join us for the next event. Should be exciting as well. Thanks so much. Have a great one.
Thank you very much for having me.